Well, the Italian riders have won Milan San Remo on 50 occasions, and this is the 98th running of this long race. It's always at the beginning of the season. It is the longest race of the year, and now we'll see who's been doing all of those winter training miles. I'm Phil Liggett. Alongside me here is Paul Sherwen. Paul, it's 294 kilometres between Milan and San Remo.
And one would expect it to be a flat 294 kilometres, but it is certainly not that. It is normally regarded as a race for the sprinters. However, in the past, riders like Eddie Merckx have laid the foundations of their victories on the final climb of the day, the renowned Poggio.
Well, Eddie's still the record holder, and nobody's going to improve on that today for sure. He's won it 7 times in all. Last year's winner, Filippo Pozzato, won a great sprint finish, and he will ride with number 1 on the team. He's on the Liquigas squad, and he'll be looking to perhaps repeat on that today. But we'll see. The big winner, Erik Zabel, is also back and riding. So too is Oscar Freire, who won this race back in 2006. The last Frenchman to win, by the way, Laurent Jalabert, back in 1995. It's a very traditional route, this, and a fairly flat, fast opening. And then the riders, as Paul will tell us, get down to those little cappies.
Well, it starts off right in the heart of Milano. They cross over the Col de Torcino before they see the Mediterranean for the first time. And yes, it's once they turn to the right there along the coast, they start the very difficult series of capos with the Capo Berta, the Capo Mele, the Cipressa down towards the end at 25 kilometres to go. But I have to say the most important, the most famous is the Poggio down at the end.
Riders signing in at the start today and being introduced to the crowd. Chance to see new teams, new colours, and let's hope we have a great season.
Just Axel Merckx there, just riding away, riding out his last season. He said he'd like to ride this year the Tour de France and then retire as soon as it's over.
Gregory Ratz there signing in, the champion of Switzerland. Paolo Bettini, he's going to get a huge round of applause here. World champion now and winner of last year's Tour of Lombardy in the World Championship jersey.
Philippe Gilbert moving away, Carlos de Cruz, the French rider from FDJ. Now the new team has been brought in here as a wildcard team, Team Tinkoff Credit Systems. We've already seen them race this year in the Tour de Langkawi to a fair amount of success as well.
And race well they did too, I have to say. Yes, you're quite right. And that was lovely warm conditions. That was what some of the riders were doing in getting ready for the new season. Underway now, the roads are still damp here and the long arm warmers are on. 197 riders checking out, and the first crash of the day, quite a melee down there.
Well, quite interesting you say melee, because the next climb of the day is the Capo Mele. It really is a race designed for dangerousness, this race of the Milano San Remo. There are always nasty crashes. One of the riders from Crédit Agricole has gone down very hard indeed there. As you can see, we're just looking at the rider is okay, but it's very slippy here. There's a lot of a problem there for Team Saunier Duval. I think that's David Miller looking after one of his teammates. Yeah. Chaos is really how I would describe Milan San Remo. It always is, it always has been, but it's a great race anyway.
And these guys are going to have to work pretty hard to get back into the race now. They spent rather a long time delayed there. And the mechanics getting back into the cars as they rejoin the action. Well, the race itself, I can tell you, let's have a look. Oh, we're going to show us again. What if it's anything to do with that car parked on the left of the road here? Very unusual to see the cars left there.
No, well, they're very often left in the road at Milan San Remo. They don't clear the route away as they do in many of the other races well in advance. And in fact, it is always dangerous coming into these towns because riders are so nervous to stay at the front end of the main field. They take incredible risks, and that's when you get a crash like that, it just tends to block up the road.
Couldn't quite see the number of that Crédit Agricole rider down there, but it might well have been Christian Marini who was on the floor. Anyway, back to the action now as we join up. This is Andrei Kunitsky. Let me give you a little bit of the background as to what has happened as we join the pictures here. These are the 3 survivors of a 6-man breakaway. After covering 46 kilometres in the first hour and averaging 46.2 in the first 2 hours, 6 riders got clear. Pavel Brut, who's still up here, Andrei Kunitsky, who's still here, and Aitor Hernandez. They are the 3 survivors. The others were Emmanuel Sella, Koen de Kurt and Roberto Traficante, but they have now been dropped. They've had a lead of 7, nearly 8 minutes, but the peloton, as by tradition, Paul's ridden this race, by the way, are now chasing them down.
211 riding at the front there, Alessandro Petacchi. He'll be looking for the win here this afternoon. He will hope that his man Erik Zabel will pilot him down towards the finish line. Erik Zabel, a prolific winner of Milan San Remo over the last few years. This is the part of the course where the riders start to get very nervous indeed. It's the repetition of these little climbs, the capi or the capos, if you like to call them. But I think the first serious one that all of these riders are concerned about is the Cipressa. It's a very difficult climb, put in a couple of years ago to try and split the race up and prevent the race being a race for the sprinters. However, it never really seems to have succeeded in doing that.
Well, they've not got far now. This is Pavel Brut here, but the peloton, as they started the climb of the Cipressa, was just 30 seconds back. So they know they've got this breakaway under control now, although they're still trying to slow it down there with Tinkoff riders near the front. As our camera nips along, we're going to start picking off the leaders here, I fear. They're saying 30 seconds. Somebody stopped already on the right. They're taking a wheel change.
I think that's actually a spectator
is it?
at the side of the road, yeah, just having a look back. This is the Capo Berta. You can recognise it because just towards the top on the right-hand side there, there's a number of cactus plants, which I always remember as if I could just hang on in the main field to the cactus plants, I was going to get over the top of the climb with the rest of the group.
Let's hope they never cut them down, otherwise there could be problems there for the riders. Well, these are the pacemakers now. Remember that Milram here. They've also got Erik Zabel, who, despite his victories here in this race, and he's the last German to win it back in 2001, he's also the last German to lose it when he was beaten on the line, waving to the crowd as Oscar Freire got through on his inside out. That's probably the one he remembers most of all.
This is Thomas Vaitkus on the front, a big strong rider on Team Discovery Channel. Riding in fourth place there is Jaroslav Popovic. He's a man who may well have a chance of performing well towards the end of this race. Spent a lot of the early part of his career actually racing in Italy. Just moving away, they've gone over the top now of the Capo Berta. They'll drop down into the small town of Imperia, and then all of a sudden they'll start to accelerate as they look now towards the Cipressa. The distance between that leading group of three riders and the main field now is 1 minute and 8 seconds. That's not enough to win Milan San Remo at this point.
Not when they had almost 8 at the base of the Ticino, where Emmanuel Sella was first over the top. They only lost 45 seconds on the big climb there, which came at 120 kilometres. But Sella now back in the pack, and just those 3 survivors, and we're not seeing too much of them right now. Aitor Hernandez, Euskaltel Euskadi, he was 136 in the Tour de France last year. It's about the best performance we can give you on him. Here they are now for the first time. Rider in the red shorts there, Aqua Saponi, only 22. And this is Andrei Kunitsky, who was second in the Under-23 Road Race Championship last year.
Well, dropping away from the Capo now, you can see these riders. There's another crash there. You see, this is the race of the crashes. Just coming down there, just coming around a sweeping bend. This rider went down very hard indeed. And that, in fact, is one of the riders from Gerolsteiner.
That's David Kopp who's gone down as he comes down, and it looked rather a nasty fall there. And there's a couple of bottles lying around. Well,
there's a couple more riders too.
Down. Now that's Kopp. No, that they're saying Vaitkus. Well, that's certainly not a Discovery rider. Maybe we'll get another shot at it. It looks like
Wegman. Wegman is the other rider who went down as well.
There's 2 Gerolsteiners. This one is Kopp here.
Oh, it does not look good at all. This is a crazy race. Milan San Remo is a race where you have to battle to stay at the front end of the main field. The doctor is there very quickly with him. Fabian Wegman was one of the other riders who went down, but in fact I think 2 riders as well went down from Team Gerolsteiner.
Well, they are both Gerolsteiner riders, you're absolutely right, and Wegman and Kopp appear to be down, and it looks as though David Kopp here is out. Well, he's the sprinter on the team here, who would be expected to do pretty well, and he won't be there now, because that looks a little bit more than just the casual fall, so it's really sad for David Kopp here. We first met him when he rode for a smaller team, La Montre, I think it was, and he used to race in South Africa, and that was when he started winning races. And he said he'd left the T-Mobile team of the day, it was Deutsche Telekom then, because he didn't want to be second fiddle to Jan Ullrich, who he was supposed to lead out in the sprints. He wanted a win for himself. Well, he certainly started to do that. That's a shame. Anyway, let's go back up to the leaders now. These are the 3 survivors of a long, long breakaway today. If they make it to the finish, they will have been in the lead for just about 210 kilometres. Well, I don't think they're going to make it. 48 seconds.
This is the town of Imperia that they're going through now. It's down to 48 seconds, as you say, but very shortly, once they leave this town, they will head up to the slopes of the Cipressa. And that is a very difficult climb. And the main field will then start to accelerate as they start to decant and get the weaker elements off the back end of the main field. As you said, Phil, this is a very long one-day classic. There in the distance is the Cipressa. They ride right through the very heart of Imperia, then take that right-hand turn, and the climb begins, and they throw all caution to the wind to try and reduce the size of the group from 70 or 80 riders down to 30 or 40 for the fast descent then down to the start of the Poggio.
I would think depressors are probably a better name than the Cipressa for the leaders now, because that gap is closing down. These riders will want to close it down fairly quickly. The Poggio is the one where people try to escape and take a few risks on the way down, but invariably, not always, they come back together for that big sprint down at the bottom. There are the three leaders now heading towards the start of the climb of the Cipressa, and that comes at 27 kilometres to go to the finish. Pavel Brut, we never heard of him until this year, and in February he was riding very, very strongly in the Tour de Langkawi in Asia. Those long flowing locks makes him pretty easy to pick out.
Been a great rider in his career on the track. He's been represented Russia on a number of occasions at the World Championships in the points race, and here he's turning his hand over to being a very good road rider as well. Another crash. You see, this is why so many riders are so nervous here in Milan San Remo. Another crash has gone down there. Looks like a rider's gone down from Barlow World.
I think they're both Barlow World, aren't they? Yep. How strange is that? We had two riders from Gerolstein and now two from Barlow World.
And that looks like Jimmy Casper.
That's unibet.com. It could well be Jimmy Casper.
Well, this is Phil. Phil, I have to say, this is what this race is all about. It's always been about this. It's always been about crashes, and it's a very nervous race. You know, it's quite possible in Milan San Remo to use a complete set of brake pads. They're saying it's actually Marco Zanotti who's gone down.
Marco Zanotti it is. I just saw his number on his bike there, and looking at his face now, it's not Jimmy Casper, the sprinter, so he's still in there. As riders take advantage for a quick bike change, we might get a better look at it here, and it's right at the front of the peloton. Couldn't be in a worse position. Zanotti was right there in that white unibet.com jersey, and now they're all taking it back, and there's no real reason for this. I don't know why that happened, because it was right at the...
It's fear and nerves, as everybody knows. They've got to stay in the first 15 to 20 places as they make their way through Imperia, because they know once they go out of Imperia, there's the right-hand turn to the start of the Cipressa climb, and there it's almost impossible to move up. And if you start the Cipressa in 40th place, you might as well almost give up any chance of winning Milan San Remo.
Well, the mechanic getting on with his job in hand there, getting the wheels ready just in case Zanotti wants to continue, but the ambulances are also hovering, so I suspect he might be out of Milan San Remo. In any case, he's not going to get back. Oscar Freire in the centre there. He won this race a couple of years ago. As the riders continue.
Just caught a glimpse riding at the front end of the group, as well as Thomas Vukla, Testa della Corsa, front end of the race. These three survivors, but they know that the gap is coming down fairly dramatically. I'm sure the next time we get a time check, it's going to read around about 30 seconds.
Well, this is Hernandez doing the pacemaking here. 24 years of age for Euskaltel Euskadi. That young lady's a few years to go yet before she starts racing. Well, there's a little, as our helicopter now flies just off the coast here, chance to see Milan San Remo down the beautiful coast road, but we don't stay on it, of course. We dive into the little climbs before we finally finish up in San Remo. You'd go the same way if you kept on the coast road, but that would be no fun, would it? 30 kilometres to go, just under 19 miles to the finish.
And that leaves us around about 3 kilometres away from the top of the Cipressa. There you can see Vukla up into second position, the man who wore the yellow jersey in the Tour de France for 10 days a couple of years ago. He's obviously in good form in the early part of the season. Also moving up, you can see a lot of riders from Milram. They'll be looking after Alessandro Patacchi, and not far away there I can just see Erik Zabel also.
I thought I caught a glimpse there, the champion of Luxembourg as well, Kim Kirken, who seemed to be pretty near the front.
The yellow jersey there is Ricardo Rico. Now, he's a young rider who just made his name available to us in the recent Tirreno Adriatico. A very good rider and a tip for stardom in Italy.
Looking for the slopes of the Cipressa first, and that looks as though Pavel Brut is trying to go away. The other two have got him under control just about. Hernandez freewheeling up, and Kunitsky, who's the youngest rider up here at 22 years of age. He's Belarus, by the way. And he's a good road race rider. He's got plenty of future. He's been the national road race champion, elite, when he was under 23 of Belarus back in 2005. So he's settling into the big pro scene. Oscar Freire riding pretty close to the front too, in those colours of Rabobank just now.
Everybody very nervous now. They're just waiting for this right-hand turn, and once they start it, it'll be absolute pandemonium as everybody tries to see whether or not they can launch the attack that splits the main field. Tom Boonen, I'm sure, is fairly much to the front end of the main field. This is the kind of race that Boonen really likes. It was his teammate who won a year ago, Pippo Pozzato.
I'll tell you what, it is a helpful win, but as always with Milan San Remo, this has been a very, very fast ride. Nearly 300 kilometres. You'd think we'd be out here all day, but far from it because of the nature of the course and usually the direction of the wind prevailing. These riders fly, and 46 kilometres rather in the opening 2 hours, a very quick start to the day. Not long now before these boys find the slopes of the Cipressa. They certainly haven't slowed down, they certainly haven't given up hope. But the field are closing in all the time now.
Well, it's just around the corner, if my memory serves me correctly. They take this left-hander, then all of a sudden the right-hander is there right in front of you, and that's where the Cipressa starts. There it is, almost as if I was riding.
What a shame, they could have gone straight on. It was much shorter and far less hilly. 18 seconds the gap now, that's all they've got here. And it's Liggett leading the charge, and that's because Filippo Pozzato is the man. This is in fact Petito here setting the pace. Pozzato was the rider who won last year, and Hernandez, well, he's the climber in the group, has gone for it.
Salita Cipressa, the climb of the Cipressa, and Hernandez has tried, but I think that's pretty much just to prolong the agony. It's always chaos. You see, this is a chaotic race, Milano San Remo. The motorbikes get in the way, and this group now is starting to split up. But before they get to the summit field, they will be caught by the front end of the main field. But I've just seen Bettini shooting out of the pack. Or is he? No, because he's in the cars.
Well, I've got a feeling he's coming back from a flat tyre, but we didn't see him have that flat tyre. But it looks as though he's making his way through the cars. What a place to have to get back, right on the climb itself.
The worst place possible.
The death throes, is it, of the breakaway now, as Aitor Hernandez tries to go clear. He's on his own because he's killed off his two breakaway companions, and those legs must be very, very tired right now.
Well, if you pull back, you can see the breakaway companions just a little bit further back behind him, but not too far away will be the front end of the main field, because this is a very strategic part of Milano San Remo. It's an important part. All the sprinters want to be at the front end, because although the race doesn't always split on the climb, it very often splits on the descent, and that's why you have to be careful. Look at Bettini. He wants to win here. He's having to ride past all of these riders who are currently being dropped. He certainly had a mechanical incident, Phil, at the wrong time.
And that is really bad luck, because he's going past these riders who are finished for the day. He just thinks he's getting on the back, and then he looks up and he finds there's another gap to be bridged. At this stage of Milan San Remo, he's got to be giving away race-winning effort here as he continues to cut through them. Somebody's getting a free ride there by the look of it.
But he's a world champion, let's not forget, and he wants the world champion's jersey to get back into the main field, because even if he can make contact with the main field, even if he can't win the race, there's always the chance that his teammate Tom Boonen can come up with the win as well.
Which would go down well, but perhaps not in Italy, because the Italians would prefer Paolo Bettini to win today. But just look at that peloton, and Bettini just about to get onto the back of it. There he is down there. It's an awful long way. He needs a few deep breaths now as he continues. He's come up there on the Bouygues Telecom rider. That'd be Frank Orenier. He's not waiting for any help. Look, he's now starting the long journey through all of the traffic.
Well, what he's got to do is he's got to keep moving up all of the time, because as we get closer to the summit of this climb, more and more riders, Phil, will get dropped off the back. Here's little Tommy Vukler looking over his shoulder. He's trying to move off the front end of the main field.
Well, at least he puts himself in front of the television cameras. You can never take that away from Tommy Vukler. And somebody from Rabobank here is trying to bridge the gap here. Wouldn't surprise me if it's not somebody like Juan Antonio Fletcher. He's the most likely, or we'll never know, because he's about to get swept up here by the whole of the field. And Liggett again trying to levy some sort of a control on the peloton here for Pozzato. And this rider once more, it's the same man. No, it's not, it's Quinziato now who's come clear. I thought it was Petito again.
Well, Quinziato going past Thomas Vukler, but they've still only got about 25 metres off the front end of the main field. It's hard to imagine the speed that the main field goes up this climb. This is one of those climbs that you're going up in the absolute big ring at full speed in excess of 40 kilometres an hour, and you're almost begging yourself to sit up and forget about it. Why am I hurting my body so much in the early part of the season? Just looking up through the main field there, you just keep getting a glimpse of the sight of the rainbow jersey of the world champion Paolo Bettini. He's still in the main field. Quinziato now could be setting something up for Pippo Pozzato. Pozzato would love to win this race if he can. The gap, not very much.
No, but Voigtla's done well to hang on here. He can't help him, but he's hanging on as they try to pull clear of the field. Once they flip over the top, a little bit of a downhill as we head on towards the Poggio. And Voigtla, he started the move, but he can't do much about this pressure attack here from Quinziato. And Quickstep, thinking of Tom Bonan for the sprint, are also leading the charge back there.
And I wonder if they know that Paolo Bettini is at the back end of the main field trying to wind his way forward. He'll try and stay in contact, try and move up to 20 or 30 from the back, and then hope that there's a deceleration after the descent and he can move to the front end of the main field. Look at the face of Thomas Voigtla. He always tries maximum when he gets into a breakaway situation like this. He's gone to the front to try and help Quinziato. It's still a long way to the summit of this climb. You see how fast they're going around these corners. Bear in mind, Phil, this is actually uphill.
Yes, and judging by the gears they're pushing, they don't believe us. But
Wow,
it doesn't
they're back.
matter. Take a look back, boys, because we're all together again here now, and no split at all, just very quick tempo riding, and still have Quickstep trying to control this now. Lamprey also have candidates to win. And up on the inside, once again, are coming the Liquigas boys. They're trying to keep it all nicely together. These motorbikes getting just a little bit too close.
Well, little bit of Italian coming through there, telling everybody to get out of the way and try and make sure that it's a safe race for the riders. So you can see a lot of pressure on at the front end of this main field. Tom Bonan obviously can't be too far away. I'm looking to see. He normally rides the Cipressa right up at the front end of the main field because he's not really one of the great climbers, Tom Bonan. That's Bonan there in 5th position. You see, he wants Milan San Remo himself.
Well, the long line, Specialetti is the rider from Liquigas who's got onto the front now. Now it's just a chance here as they settle just a little bit that Bettini might nip through a few places. He's still stuck at the back of the peloton, and the Quick-Step rider there just caught a glimpse of him but didn't quite catch his number for you. But it's 163, so that makes it. It doesn't look like Tom Bonan. Is it Tom Bonan?
That is Tom Bonan. Just on his wheel is Alessandro Patacchi, number 211. You can see the big bouncing style of Tom Bonan. You can't see the rainbow bands from this altitude.
Well, there's Oscar Freire. He's riding about 6 men down. It could be a crossing of swords of those two great sprinters if it comes down to it. Watch out also for Pozzato. He stands out pretty easily with only the number 1 on his back. But Bonan, it's interesting. Bonan hovering very near the front now and has told his team to chase down that earlier breakaway. Quite clearly believes he has a chance today.
Well, it's a race that Tom Bonan really wants to win if he can. He'd like to get himself across the line in first place. Paolo Bettini is still struggling. You know, it's so unfortunate if you have a mechanical problem at the wrong time in a race. And for Paolo Bettini, that was certainly the wrong moment in the race to have that flat tyre. Quick-Step have got control, looking over the shoulders there. They're looking to see where is Tom Bonan. Is he okay? Well, the answer to that question is yes. He's in 4th position. He's not right now going to make any kind of a move. He just wants to be at the front over the top of this climb, and he wants to be at the front over the top of the Cipressa for what will probably be a large group sprint towards the line.
Well, that was Kevin Van Imp who was doing the climb. I think he's the nephew of the great Belgian climber Lucien Van Imp, who won the King of the Mountains title 6 times in the Tour de France, which was equaling the record at the time of Federico Badamonti's. Well, there's another little move trying to go away. This time it's Gasparotto who's gone clear. You've got to say that Liquigas are trying to soften the race up, certainly in favour of Filippo Pozzato.
They certainly have a plan here this afternoon, is to make these climbs as hard as possible as he rides off the front end of the main field. It's actually Pellizotti. You recognise him by the long flowing locks underneath his crash helmet. A star of the future, they say, for Italian cycling. Here he's riding on his own account. There may be a little bit of a dummy there because with those long flowing locks he could very much easily be mistaken for Pippo Pozzato as well.
Well, this is Gerolsteiner putting in a little move here. Well, they've lost 2 men out on the road today that we know of in the same crash. But at the minute, it could be Stefan Schumacher who's trying, but it's not. It's Andrea Moletta, 133, who's got up there to Pellizotti. So 2 strong men here, desperate moments these. One of these moves might work.
It's a horrendous climb, this, because it's one of those gradients that you think this climb is going to be over. It's nearly finished. Then all of a sudden you go round a corner. There's another kilometre to keep going upwards. The main field's starting to stretch into a line at the front, but this is not, Phil, the critical climb of the day. It's the first race, the first climb. It's the hors d'oeuvre. The main climb for me has always been the Poggio. That is the most strategic point of this whole race.
Well, we just saw the face there of Maletta and also Pelizzotti. They're a tandem here, trying to break something of it or just hang out and be the tempters for the rest. But the peloton has sat up just a little bit and eased back here. Nobody's starting the reaction. They're waiting for another move. Far side is Kim Kirken, the champion of Luxembourg, just watching everybody on T-Mobile. There comes the reaction. It looks like case upon.
Well, they're lifting the pressure at the front end of the main field. Everybody now is trying to do something here this afternoon. In fact, there's a rider moving off the front there, and this looks to me like Jaroslav Popovic making the move.
Well, this would be a turn-up, but Popovic, a very strong man, would think of him more perhaps in the Tour of Italy or the Tour de France, but he's trying to get some form into those legs, and he's still here, very much so. And a huge effort now to try and reach two leaders. That would make three very good riders up front, but of course the Poggio would decide all.
Well, they've still got the descent of the Cipressa first to negotiate before they get onto around about a 10-kilometre section of flat road in between the Cipressa and, of course, the Poggio. The main field slowing down a fraction. I think they're quite happy with the way they've got over this climb. Now it's Team Lampre getting themselves organised on the front end of the main field.
So this is almost the Lampre team time trial with a little intrusion here from Erik Zabel's team, Milram. As they know they've got to bring back these three. They can't afford this to be a long chase as they go into the very narrow street that they just about got through that gap.
Well, this is the town of Cipressa. This is basically the summit of the climb. They ride across the town square and then they start the descent, which is a very dangerous descent as well. The leading group of three now are on the descent, and I've seen a number of nasty crashes over the years on these descents. In fact, on this particular corner, I saw Jan Raas crash and go over the top of that crash barrier.
Well, there are four previous winners, and as far as I know, they're all in this leading group. Paolo Bettini won this race in 2003, Oscar Freire 2004, and Alessandro Bertacchi in 2005, and indeed last year, Pozzato. And those four riders are still in this leading group here. Erik Zabel, well, he's won it 4 times, but the last time back in 2001. And there's the world champion. Now, where is he in the peloton? He's still got a bit of work to do, Paul.
Well, he's moved up to around about 30th position. So once they got towards the summit of the Cipressa, he moved his way through that main field. All he's got to hope is he can just get his heart rate to come down a little bit, try and get rid of that lactic acid, recuperate if he can on the 10 kilometres which separates the bottom of the Cipressa and the start of the Poggio. But Team Milram, Phil, have got a lot of riders at the front end of this main field. Popovic has made the junction now, so we're looking at 3 riders. Look how dangerous these descents are. If you get it wrong on a descent like this, there's no way off the road at all. You're straight into a brick wall.
Well, there's a beautiful sight as Milan San Remo snakes its way away through the greenhouses here, heading back to the valley and the river and the ocean below, rather, as we see these riders trying to cause a reaction here to get us back up to those 3 leaders. There's a two-pronged attack from Milram. Erik Zabel normally is supposed to lead out Pataki these days, but who knows, they're both capable of the win. But first of all, you've got to catch the 3 riders up front, and Milram and Lampre seem to be showing the most interest. 12 miles to go.
20 kilometres to go to the finish as they continue to snake down. It's still a very large group, Phil, as we've been over the summit of the climb of the Cipressa, and in fact I would say there's still between 80 and 90 riders still in contention. There's a rider there up at the front from Team Rabobank. They'll be thinking, of course,
That one is a very, very nasty crash indeed. That's the Gerolsteiner rider Maletta who's hit that. He was in the move earlier on, but I didn't like the way he fell there.
This is such a dangerous descent. The Poggio as well is a dangerous descent because there is nowhere to go. There is no soft landing if you get it wrong on a descent like this. And he went down very hard. I just hope he's okay. That was a major shock.
Well, he thumped right into the wall and to the telegraph pole, I think it was. I don't know if we'll get another shot of that, but that was a very, very nasty fall there. I think it was Andrea Maletta. We didn't get it long to spot him. But Gerolsteiner, you could say this isn't their Milan San Remo today, because that's the 3rd rider we know of out with a crash. And there is, in fact, they all seem to have ignored him completely. And just about now, here we are going to see it again. It was Maletta in the leading group, and he really did hit that very, very painfully indeed. Completely unsighted.
I can't understand how he went down there because it was as if he lost it. It looks as if maybe he'd had a flat tyre because he was going straight into that corner. The doctor's there, up alongside him.
Well, he was in that leading group. Jaroslav Popovic was behind him, but this doesn't look good at all. He could well have broken his leg there, Paul, the way he hit that.
Well, that was a very hard,
lamppost,
abrupt
in fact.
stop, and it was not a soft landing at all for this rider. At least the doctors are there immediately. The doctors are immediately on hand to look after him.
Well, the trouble
Well,
was,
this has got to be one of the bloodiest Milan San Remos I think I've ever seen. I've always known Milan San Remo, Phil, as being a race of accidents and crashes, but I don't think I've ever seen any quite as dramatic as the ones we've seen this afternoon.
Well, we haven't seen, we've certainly seen some bad ones, that's for sure. Well, that trouble is that has taken out one of the men from that lead group of 3 now. That well has reduced their chances here as the boys from Lampre, this is Patsy Villa here, and trying to just get this race back. They were staying with the pictures of Maletta on the right. And the rider here from Milan, by the way, is Celestino. He's a classic win in his own right, but I think here more interested in getting back up to those leaders.
Well, I'm not quite sure what's happening here with Patsy Villa. I can only think that these 2 riders have managed to get away on the descent of the Cipressa. The 2 riders at the top are the 2 leaders. That is Jaroslav Popovic, and he's with the rider that started the move, Pelizzotti. The 2 riders at the bottom, Patsy Villa and the rider from Milram, I think are 2 riders who managed to get clear on the descent, so they're in 3rd and 4th place on the road, riding on the flat section which separates the Cipressa from the Poggio.
Well, Maletta is quite conscious and seems basically okay, but they're not going to move him. He will go into the ambulance which they've called up. I suspect that he's broken that leg because of the way he hit that lamppost. Back with the 2 remaining leaders here. Pelizzotti totally committed at the moment, and so too is Jaroslav Popovic. They'll be missing that 3rd wheel though to give them some relay. You're right, Villa and Celestino are the next 2 riders on the road, and they're only 10 seconds away.
Well, if the 4 riders get together, they've got a serious chance of getting to the foot of the Poggio ahead of the front end of the main field. The big problem is that once you've made a massive effort like this over this 10-kilometre flat pot, you take the right-hand turn to the start of the Poggio, and then all of a sudden there's no oxygen left, there's no power left in the legs.
This might compromise the attempt to Patacchio Zabel in the sprint here, because Milram will have a man in the 4-man leading group, and that will put Celestino up here. And we keep going back to these pictures. I think we've seen enough of them personally, but it looks as though he will be taken to hospital and they'll check him out completely. Check on him in the press tomorrow, but I hope he's okay. Very unlucky. He was right in the centre of those 3 descending riders. Maybe for a moment he lost his sight line, but he certainly never made the bend, and he should have done, because Popovic was behind him on the same line and got round quite comfortably.
I tell you, they're all very dodgy corners on the descent of the Cipressa. I've seen danger there in the past. The Poggio is pretty much the same. These 2 riders have now got a 10-second advantage over the 2 chasers and a 20-second advantage over the front end of the main field. This man we're looking at, Jaroslav Popovic, really is sheer class. One day he's going to win himself a massive bike race, and look at the power. He just sits there rock solid on his machine.
The thing is, you're committed, you take gambles, you hope they work. If they don't, well, after all, you are human, you can't do it again. So you've got to hope sometimes luck is on your side. These 2 are fighting very hard to rejoin those 2, but the pack is not far behind them right now. Patsy Villa, as he continues towards the line now, made his name in Paris-Nice and has got good form.
Celestino not quite sure what to do. Looking back, you can see the front end of the main field. He knows he's got a job of work to do here this afternoon. Really, he's supposed to be looking after Alessandro Patacchi and Erik Zabel. That's where we're going to in the distance. That is the town of San Remo. But to get there, we're going to go over that nasty little hill over on the right-hand side.
Unfortunately, but you see, you can always take the shortcut on the bottom road, which many riders do, by the way, when they're off the back and decided to abandon the race. They just go the shortest way home. But it's the Poggio, as always, the final jumping off point before the finish down in Milano. These are still the 2 leaders. I wonder if it would have made any difference if Maletta hadn't have crashed, because they're still clear.
They're still clear. They've got about 5 kilometres now to the right-hand turn. That's the Poggio, the climb just in front of them. These 2 riders are really now acting like a carrot in front of the donkey, because they're just in front of the main field waiting to pounce, the main field waiting for their acceleration to place their leaders in the first 5 to 10 positions once we take the right-hand turn for the start of the Poggio. The 2 riders on the left-hand side, the right-hand side, are the 2 leaders. They're still working very well together, but they've only got 20 seconds, and they're not increasing their advantage, while the main field, Phil, is waiting for the moment to accelerate and pounce.
3 Italians on the attack of the 4 riders. We could do with coming together, but we know that the main field is only a hatful of seconds behind the second two riders on the road. So we are going to see an explosion on the Poggio climb. There's no doubt about that now, as they'll want a reshuffle of the pack.
Well, they've just brought back the two men in the middle back into the fold, Pachivilla, and you can see the rider from Milram there is about to move up to the front end of the main field. He's got a job of work to do here this afternoon. He's got to now turn it around and start looking after his man, and his man is Pataki. But Quick Step have now decided this is the moment to put the pressure down and get their man. Bonin is right at the end of that line of dark blue jerseys. He's waiting. He wants to win this race. This is one of the big races that riders like Tom Boonen would like to have on their resume.
But despite the effort here of these two riders, the gap prized out is 26 seconds. Despite the chase, Paolo Bettini is in the centre of our picture right now. He's on Quick Step and he's joined the team in pursuit. Somehow on that climb, there he is off to the right, he has managed to come through that huge pack of riders. It's amazing.
Well, let's not forget he is the champion of the world and he's a very proud man. This is regarded as one of the great races of Italy. He is the world champion. He would not like to see the world champion's jersey abandoned at the side of the road, and he would not like to see it riding at the back end of the main field. That's why he's dragged himself to the front.
Well, all of the Quick Step riders are here. Kevin Hulsmans is a rider doing a major amount of work in this pursuit here. And the man they're all trying to do it for is Tom Bonin, or is it Paolo Bettini? He may have given away too much energy in that chase back. These two riders are hanging on, but I don't think you can win Milan San Remo if you hit the Poggio with only 26 seconds.
Well, they're not too far away from the start now of the Poggio. They're going to go through this small tunnel in a moment. They'll come out, and on the other side, it's about a kilometre to the right-hand turn. They're all, you can see the main field is also in the same town now as they take that left-hand bend, and right in front of them, they'll also see the tunnel through the cliffs.
All for Tom Bone as far as Cricks are concerned. We've got a third-place finish, outwitted by a fast-finishing Filippo Pizzato last year. He was a bit surprised, but he took his chance well, although it appeared, if you were watching it, to be a sprint. In fact, Pizzato had made a winning move, and they simply never caught him. See if he can pull the same stunt today as we head towards the finish. We're heading towards the lower slopes of the Poggio.
Into the tunnel. Two leaders. Who's going to come out?
Yeah, it's got a way. Your cameras can't go into the tunnels yet. We haven't worked out the technology for those signals, but 28 seconds is still the gap. Terrific ride by those two riders, and would it have been more if there had been three riders? But look at the chase here by Quick Step now, who seem to have taken control of Milan San Remo.
Well, they know now in the next kilometre or so is probably the most strategic kilometre of Milan San Remo. It's that right-hand turn for the start, 12 kilometres to the finish line. In fact, we're only about 7 kilometres away from San Remo, but you take a right-hand turn and go uphill for 2 kilometres, 3 kilometres before plunging down into the outskirts of San Remo. These two riders are still working well together, but I don't feel, Phil, they've got enough yet to win Milan San Remo because the gap is not stretching. It's locked in still at that 26 to 28 second mark.
Well, it's almost impossible to ride away from the peloton now because they're in full cry and they know the finish is round the corner. So they've literally got to just keep going as best they can. They're not going to pull away any further now. It's a question of hanging on and hoping that there is a slight relaxation of the pace. I think the field is just waiting for the explosion on the Poggio.
Robbie McEwen.
Yes, and he always says he's only ever got to the finish twice, and when he got there he was involved in a crash and then he got mixed up and missed a split in the sprint. But he says if he can get to Milan San Remo this time, he's got a real chance of winning, and he's right there.
Well, there he is, just sitting a little bit too far back for the approach to the Poggio. He needs to move up into about 10th or 15th place. Boonen riding confidently at the front end of the main field. 10 kilometres to go for the two leaders. Now, we're not very far. It's a very nervous moment now from that right-hand turn. I would say, Phil, not really very much more than 1.5 kilometres.
Time to get nervous legs now as you head up towards the climb. This looks like a little bit of a climb anyway here, as Popovic and Pelazzotti try to hold off the rest of the field here, and here they come. And nobody now can control anything because it looks as though CSC have got the men on the front, and Quick Step won't be unhappy about that. They've done a lot of work here. You've got to keep these riders in a vacuum now and keep everybody away from them because the move could happen at the blink of an eyelid.
Well, Team CSC are always a team for the start of the season. There are the two leaders, and all of a sudden the main field is right behind them. Less than 2 or 3 seconds, it's all over for those two men because the main field is now completely and utterly on fire. A different team on the front, Team CSC, but look at the speed. A few moments ago it was half a minute. Now it's nothing.
And now we're about to start the climb up towards the finishing line here. That's Fabian Cancellara, the World Time Trial Champion, who's driving on the front of the race right now. There's the flick onto the Poggio. They've still got the lead just, and they're still out of sight, but I think the whole train is going to thunder up to them right now.
Well, as soon as you hit the first kilometre, you see the acceleration. There's the front end of the main field. Stuart Grady will be looking to do a fine performance here as well, but all over the front you can see it's Team CSC. Tom Boonen's not the kind of rider who will try and make a move here on the slopes of the Poggio, but he's got to try and stay in the first 5 to 10 riders.
Well, that's Karsten Groen now of Team CSC, the Dutchman, who's now setting the pace. Cancellara has disappeared. Groen's turn to take over. I would say you're right, because Stuart O'Grady is on form and is up here, as that Natosca Freire too. It's always dangerous. Freire's either in the mix or hopelessly out of it, and he's in the mix right now.
He's in the mix, and he's sitting right on the wheel of Tom Boonen. He knows that's a good wheel to follow. Tom Boonen's not going to accelerate on the climb, but he's going to be looked after by his teammates. Not too far away is Matteo Tossato. In fact, this is Matteo Tossato now coming to the front. He's going to keep the pace nice and high. The two leaders going backwards. There is Jaroslav Popovic. He's been caught. And Pelizotto, well, he's going backwards at the rate of knots.
Could be Carlos Peredo setting the pace there for Quick Step on the front. Here is the smaller rider. And meanwhile, Milram relying on Fabio Sacchi, pretty well known in Australia, won a stage of the Tour Down Under when he used to race on Seiko. But he's also at the head of the field. There's quite a lot of riders now at this point are going to be thinking they have a chance here, but then they always do at this stage of the race. It all disappears on the way down. Yeah,
Alessandro Pataki's up there in around about 10th position, so he's riding fairly well this afternoon. But it's important. Look at that. There's Paolo Bettini. What a great ride by him to be up at the front end still after having a very badly timed mechanical incident. That's a show, Phil, that he's got great form.
Looking down, Kim Kirken has held that position. He's the rider with the red top to his jersey, champion of Luxembourg. He's held that position for hours upon end without doing any work. He's a clever rider. And this is Popovic. I thought we caught him.
Well, we did catch him. He went backwards, and I think he decided he'd still got pretty good legs, so he'd have another go off the front end of the main field, and this will have caught them napping.
Well, they think, oh no, not again at this stage, I would think, but that is a good move, I think, by Jaroslav Popovic. It's detracting from all of the other riders on Team Discovery Channel, and there's no immediate reaction coming from the field. It's up to someone else, Quickstep says. And there's the twist and turn to the Poggio. You can look down on the peloton, you can look up to the leaders, and there he is, Jaroslav Popovic. Somebody's made a move behind.
That's a rider from Team Barlow World has seen the chance of trying to come across here.
Well, that's Alexander Efenkim here, a Russian rider on Barlow World. He is the brother. There's two Efenkims. One Efenkim isn't on the same team, and this one's a newcomer here.
Well, there's Oscar Freire moving up to the front there. A little bit further forward, you can just see Frank Schleck. He's number 191. Everybody now wants to be right at the front end of this main field. Alessandro Balan is not too far away either. He's a man that I think Team Lampre will be counting on here this afternoon.
Now, as the riders start to rethink just how are they going to pick up here with Jaroslav Popovic, the Ukrainian rider, who is clear of the field. And I was just wondering, when they cut back to these slow motion, I always worry in case they're going to show a crash. But he did wobble a bit, but he got round safely, and the Tinkoff team now tried to bring him back.
Well, Team Tinkoff is really a great team for the start of this season. I think we'll see great things, and that acceleration there has in fact forced a little split off the front end of the main field. You can see the way that Quickstep are riding. They don't want to accelerate too much to pull these groups back because they don't want to take any sting away from the legs of Tom Bonen. If they accelerate to nail back these groups, they'll take a little bit of his final top-end speed away for the sprint down towards the end. So they'll let the group go and slowly accelerate and bring back the group.
Ricardo Serrano was the Tinkoff man who was responsible there for the capture of Efenkim, and the rider in the picture now is Francesco Tomai of Panaria, but this looks a little bit more under control. Nice to see Française des Jeux. That's Philippe Gilbert there. Now that's a man who could take an opportunistic moment.
Luca Mazzanti up here now. This is the rider from Team Lampre, Panaria, I should say, trying to keep the pressure nice and high. They've got a little gap, but it's not a monster gap over the front end of the main field. They can't let a man like Philippe Gilbert go free because he is a man who could come up with a win down towards the end. And Jaroslav Popovic has done the ride of the Poggio here, and he's still got a bit of fire in his legs.
He's gone again. Immediately on the split, Efenkim thought he was coming onto the back of the group, and he's coming onto the back of the split. And I don't know where Popovic found the strength there to go with that split, but there he is. I'm not sure he has found the strength now. One attack too many, I think, for Jaroslav Popovic, but this is becoming quite a difficult race here to read for the teams and trying to control it, because now we have yet another breakaway going clear here. This is Riccardo Rico, who slips through on the inside and unleashes a terrific turn.
Matthias Kessler's a rider in there for Team Astana, but this is a great move by young Rico. He's a new kid on the block we've always been talking about since Tirreno Adriatico. Now, if you go over the top of the Poggio with a 30-second advantage, you've got a very good crack at winning this race.
Well, Philippe Gilbert is flying the flag here. Yes, he's on the French team, but he is in fact a Belgian rider. And so the last Belgian rider to win, by the way, I'm never sure which country he was a member of, but on this occasion, André Schmil was a Belgian national back in 1999.
Well, he's been a Moldovan, a Russian, Ukrainian. I think, in fact, he ended up his career being a Belgian, but finally decided to go back to being a Moldovan.
Well, his claim as the last Belgian to win, as we now see Riccardo Rico. He is the new big name here in Italian cycling. He's got a good ally in Philippe Gilbert, a man from the Ardennes in Belgium, where hills like this abound, and Gilbert will give it everything here.
Well, this is a great move of these two riders. They're both working well together. Two riders on the up and up in the sport. Gilbert is the rider in the white jersey. This is the famous corner at the top of the Poggio. This is the start of the descent, where my mate Alain Bondu crashed many years ago when he was racing down here for the win. And on that occasion, the winner ended up being Marc Gomez of Team Walbert at the time.
And of course, he'd have never have won if Alain had stayed upright, would he?
Well, probably not, because Alain was a pretty good trackman, I think I tend to remember. He was two-time world champion of the pursuit.
Well, we're on the plunge down now. There is a gap of 10 seconds. It may or may not be enough, because once they run off the Poggio, it's a couple of kilometres, not much more than that, as they race up towards the finish. And Bettini is getting himself up near the front. Kim Kirken still marshalling the attacks here, and he's the second rider in line just at the moment.
Very keen, and you also noticed that Frank Schleck was keen to move Paolo Bettini from the back of the race up to the front end of the race now. Matthias Kessler, this is the move here. This was the move of three riders just towards the summit. The acceleration of Riccardo Rico there you can see straight off the front. But Gilbert is a strong rider. He's a classics rider. Now they're on the descent. This, again, is a hair-raising, crazy descent. You've got to take risks if you've only got 15 or 20 seconds advantage with about 5 kilometres to go to the finish of Milan San Remo.
What happens if you've only got 10? Because these two riders have little more than that now, as Gilbert takes Riccardo, that right, Riccardo Rico rather, right, all in the same initial.
Double R.
Thank you very much. This is the corner coming up, Paul, isn't it? It's the right, then it's a left corner. Wasn't that where the crash was with Alain Bondu here?
It was actually the first corner right up at the top, just as it started to rain. As you can see here, Paolo Bettini's now started to make the pressure on the front end of the main field. He's obviously, I think, decided he's going to do the work for Tom Bonen.
And Bettini, who's had a very, very up and a down ride, to say the least, is now trying to drag his team captain back into the fray here. He's an incredibly good bike rider and such an aggressive bike rider.
Alessandro Ballan, I don't think he'll be thinking about himself now. He's thinking about the man behind him. That's Daniele Benati there. He's a great sprinter himself.
Well, he's very well up, and I'm not sure he wants to be quite that well up at the moment. As they start to, it looks like Gusev coming down there for Discovery Channel. He's also another one of the up-and-comers. There's a little replay, I think it is, of the switchbacks led by the world champion, and now we go back up to the two leaders. They're still clear on this very, very difficult descent. There is San Remo in the distance. He's not far away now. They begin to sense they've got a real chance here, but what do they need? 20 seconds when they come off the drop?
God, they need at least 30 seconds. I remember a few years ago, a man called Moreno Argentine was well in the lead on a descent like this. An Italian riding to victory in Milan San Remo, and all of a sudden, a bullet dropped out of the main field. It was called Sean Kelly, and he just caught Moreno Argentina at the 1 kilometre to go banner. And unfortunately for the Italian, it was Kelly who got the win on that occasion.
And victory for Ireland. Kelly's won this a couple of times, in fact. Milan San Remo, without doubt, the most famous one-day cyclist ever to come out of Ireland. As we go in, it looks like 3 kilometres to go to the finish. And the crowd cheering on an Italian and indeed a Belgian as they race towards the line.
Well, 3 kilometres to go to the finish, about a kilometre till they get on the flat part of the road inside San Remo, and then it's the line-up for the Via Roma. And it is a long Via Roma, you know, it's a long way to the finish line. You start that sprint too early, it's slightly uphill, and you'll find yourself slowing down towards the end. A little bit of panic now, I think, because these riders don't realise how strongly those two riders are working together at the front, which is why Paolo Bettini here, the champion of the world, is absolutely sacrificing himself, because he's put his bet, I think, this afternoon on Tom Bonen. There is Gusev in about 5th position. Here we are, off the bottom of the Poggio now, onto the flat part, right in the heart of San Remo. Very shortly they will see in the distance the Flamme Rouge. There's a left-hand turn, then followed by a right-hand turn, and the Via Roma is right up in front of them. This is the SS Aurelia. That's the name of the road which drives right along the coast of Italy.
And there is the peloton being led along here by Pazzi Viola as the charge is on now to try and wipe it out. The other rider there is Alessandro Ballan in 2nd place. Philippe Gilbert now is having to ride here, flick of the elbow saying, come on. Well, if Riccardo can't do it, then he's not going to win. He's got to try and help him.
Well, they've got to work together. There is number 171, Oscar Freire, just sitting back there. 163, that is Tom Bonen. Side by side, on the wheel of Alessandro Petacchi. They're all battling now. The big names are moving to the front. They're all getting a little bit desperate too. You've got to stay calm. You've got to play that game of poker. On the right-hand side is the casino. That's probably why they're playing poker here this afternoon. But these two guys mustn't gamble anything, because, in fact, I think it's too late.
The man in red there is Gabriele Galbucci, another good sprinter too, but they're going to shut it right down, and they're going to shut it down around about 2 kilometres from the finish here.
It's not a very big group. That actually, the descent of the Poggio here this afternoon has split that front end, but all of the big names, Phil, are at the front end of this group. Still in control, Team Lampre.
Lampre, and I think this is still Pazzi Viola here as they go under 1 kilometre to go, but there's bad news for everybody because Milram have got all of the riders right up to the front now, being led by Fabio Sacchi, the strong rider who is the early lead-out man for Alessandro Petacchi.
Well, there's the left-hander, this is the right-hander. Erik Zabel was right up there as well. Once they take this right-hander, it's across the town square and they'll line up for the finish line.
Well, you're right about one thing, Paul. There is a sprint here as the race referee tries to get in the middle and spoil it for everybody because his car's going to bring the rest of the field up. It's all too late. And just dropping away now is Alessandro Ballan for Lampre. Now they're starting to open up the sprint. Sacchi will be the first, then they'll start to file off. Petacchi is tucked in there. Where is Big Tom Bonen? He's not too far away from the action here, as they all start to go for the line now. Well, this looking like a formality at the moment here for Alessandro Petacchi, because now they're looking for him. A little bit of gesticulation there, but I mean, you've got to move out of the way and get out of the way, because there is Oscar Freire also, and 25 kilo. Oscar Freire is going to win this one and spoil the party. The man from Holland, no, ride for Holland. The man from Spain has won it. You know, he's only ever the 4th Spanish victory in the history of Milan San Remo, and those victories, Paul, shared by just 2 men, Poble and Oscar Freire.
Well, Oscar Freire, what a man. He really is the man for the grand occasions as he comes through there to get himself the victory. Great lead out here by Erik Zabel. Just watch this. Team Milram had everything right so far. There you can see in 2nd position, just starting the acceleration now, is Erik Zabel, himself a former winner. The teammate there shouting to Alessandro Petacchi. Petacchi starts to wind up, Phil, but he hasn't got the power, he hasn't got the acceleration, and he's easily overtaken there by Oscar Freire, and he's overtaken by everybody else in the main field.
So Oscar Freire has won again at Milan San Remo here, and he did it so well. He came out of the shadow of everybody. Tom Bonen in the centre. He's finishing 3rd, by the way, the same position, and Stuart O'Grady alongside Robbie McEwen. All the big sprinters were there, but they got it all wrong, and Oscar Freire on his day is unbeatable. Look at that sprint for 2nd place. I'm saying Tom Bonen's 3rd. He might be 4th, and then again, he might be 2nd. We'll wait for the photo.
Well, there's no doubt about who wins the race, because Oscar Freire timed his acceleration to absolute and utter perfection there.
Well, there is the result, and Alan Davis, I missed him, I forgot about his new colours in Team Discovery Channel, taking 2nd. Bonen 3rd he was, McEwen got 4th. 3 Australians there in the top 5 finishers, but they're all beaten today by the man who's been a world champion on 3 occasions now. Oscar Freire has got himself 2 Milan San Remos, and as so often happens, he comes up with the goods when it matters. So the season is underway now, and Oscar Freire is the first big winner of the year, getting victory over Alan Davis on his new Team Discovery channel. Well, we'll stay with it now for a long time this year. You stay with us, and goodbye for now.